So now it's my pleasure, no joke anymore, to introduce Dr. Yanki Yazgan. He's a professor of child and adolescent psychiatry from Marmara Medical School in Istanbul.
So, I'm both lucky or unlucky. It's the end of the day, so I can't say anything. So, but probably you're all exhausted, and I'll try to make my talk a bit lighter, and I'll be skipping some of the slides. So I think I need to say next. So there's another slide over here. Okay. I'm coming from. No, please, just the previous one. I'm coming from Istanbul, and I'll be talking about how the context we live in and we work in shape the way we practice, and also how the research focus or the kind of work we do can vary with the circumstances we are in. I think it was a nice coincidence to hear the impact of context on psychopathology from our colleague in Columbia University. And so probably context doesn't only shape psychopathology, but also normal behavior, the way we do our work, and we are bound by the circumstances where we live and our efforts to change it. I come from Turkey. You know, some of the Brazilian colleagues in the audience may know Turkey from Salve Jorge on the Brazilian TV. I have never seen a Brazilian white slave in Turkey, by the way, but at least it's on the Brazilian television, so it's the first time I hear about it. So, but I'll look into that, and I'll go to Cappadocia. Next slide, please. The first time I was in Brazil was in 1994, thanks to our late friend Marcos Mercadante, an old friend of mine and a former faculty at Unifesp here. And at every corner of the street, I'm thinking of him. Yeah. And I don't know what you say in Brazil, but we say God give plenty of soil to him. That's what we say. So I mean, next slide, please. So this is I'm a hoarder. I keep old documents. This is August 1994 when he was at Santa Casa inviting me for a psychopharm course. Today I will talk nothing about psychopharm, but I was at Yale then and working on pediatric psychopharmacology before I went back to Turkey, and 2 more memories. Next, please. And this is my first appearance on a TV show. Here you can see Marcos, and here you can see, next slide, please, Cesar Rosario, and this is the Garden of Santa Casa, 1994, November. You see, this is me. Next, please. So what I will focus on today in my talk for the next 30-35 minutes is I will emphasize the mental health, the health promotion work, which may contribute to improving the context in a non-specific way for prevention of mental disorders. And so how I moved from psychopharm research and neuroscience research to health promotion work, and that will be somewhat illustrative to perhaps some of our younger colleagues while they are planning their careers. Next, please. Next. First of all, we are almost all doctors or psychologists. We are clinicians, and as Leon Eisenberg says, I think we are different from the investigators by nature, because our trainings shape us in a way as if we are compelled to, to respond to our patients' needs, and there is some kind of an imperative in attending to the relief of the stress. So that's what usually shapes our hypothesis and the kind of work we do. And usually what we see is our context, and it just leads the kind of work we do. Next, please. So I like that term, this developing country. It was recently replaced by this BRIC, the Brazil, Russia, India, China thing. I think it's more of a financial market wording. But it means that there's a lot of money, but for a little group of people, a little number of people. Still, they are rich, but the countries are not that rich. There's some money that goes into some minorities, but the rest still are the poor. But so Turkey is a developing country too, and somewhat doing well. But most of our work is usually shaped by not the regular circumstances where we can work on caseness, identifying caseness in schools kind of work, but sometimes extraordinary circumstances are more determinant of the kind of work that we choose to do. And usually there is an important and urgent question that we try to answer. Next, please. For example, the need for prevention is urgent in an extraordinary circumstance, and there is an adversity which you are not choosing, but it's almost difficult. It's difficult, sometimes almost impossible to avoid. So one of the extraordinary circumstances that shaped the kind of research I had done was, next slide, please. Next again. Again, next. So it was the year of 1999. There was a big earthquake in Turkey. So I was just working on genotyping DRD4 and writing a paper for molecular psychiatry. There was an earthquake that took 30,000 lives, just 100 kilometers away from where I live, and millions of people affected, and that just changed the direction of my work. Next slide, please. And millions were shocked and affected emotionally, and there were almost no resources. Next, please. And the most important part, as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, the 35% of the affected were under age 18. And the rest, again, were like another 12% were between ages 18 and 30. So there was a task waiting for us, what to do for these people, again, to prevent further psychopathology that might arise from the awe and shock that came with the disaster. Next, please. So in that condition, I think probably rescue work was of the highest priority, but for the mental health people, I think preventing development of even worse conditions that would follow the exposure to the trauma was of highest priority. Next, please. So it's funny that unusual circumstances, when the circumstance that you never anticipate, they urge you to find unusual ways. So, for example, I had never thought that I would be delivering psychotherapy sessions in a tent, or I would be working with individuals who were affected by the earthquake but didn't speak my language in my own country. And so it was a time, for example, that we became innovative and creative, and it's, again, that was a time that you never think about research. You don't think about collecting data, but just doing some service. Next, please. We tried to, at that time, to use the whatever existed. We had teachers and we had parents, so we didn't have we had a huge shortage of mental health professionals, but we had some know-how that we could convey to teachers and use them as mediators of mental health messages and via the parents. So that was the time, I think, many of mental health professionals in Turkey, including myself, we really discovered the power of non-medical, non-mental health, non-psychologists, non-psychiatrist people that can be very instrumental in creating a psychological recovery process. Because I think what mattered at that time most was that creating a positive atmosphere for the people who were affected, and also transmitting positive expectations. So that was actually the summary of what we did. Next, please. Actually, we used the teachers as mediators and made a CBT program for trauma a part of the curriculum, and it was taught in the elementary schools just 2 months, beginning just 2 months after the earthquake. And what we saw that intervention, of course, coupled with several parallel community-based interventions, had a real impact in increasing decreasing the prevalence of severe and very severe PTSD from 30% to 18%. And that was particularly true, as you can see here, as the number of the risk factors increased, the impact of the intervention was at its highest. I think it's paralleled in many other studies as well. And by risk factors, I mean exposure to someone dead, just sitting under the rubble with you for 48 hours, or having lost your a close one. These are the risk factors which I'm talking about. And so our interventions were most effective for the people who were affected most. And in a 3 years' time, we came back. Also, we never left the area, but in 3 years' time, we saw that both the participant group and the control group at the end of 3.5 years had reached a similar prevalence of PTSD. So that means, in a way, regardless of the intervention we provided, they had come to the same point in terms of being free of psychopathology. However, as you can see from that graph, there was a symptom-free period that we were able to create for the intervention group that gave them some real space to breathe, and that was reflected by not the number of symptoms of PTSD at the end of the intervention, at the end of this follow-up period, but by the quality of life measures that reflected the child's functioning in the community, in the school, and in the family. And that made me and many others think once again about our measures of that reflect the impact of interventions we deliver. And probably it led me to in the direction of more universalist interventions, more on health promotion studies, even for the purpose of reducing the risk of mental disorders. Next, please. So the axiom that followed that time was this: are we able to use a disaster model for the non-disaster conditions? When I talked about this in Istanbul, for example, they would say that, okay, we are never free of a disaster condition in this country. We are always living in a crisis mode, and a crisis following another crisis. And so probably there is not a life period in some countries that's free of disasters. There's always something happening bad. However, I think methods that we used in disaster times were extendable to probably non-disaster times as to be used for routine non-cases. And this was the inspiration behind many of the studies that followed the earthquake of 1999 in Turkey. And there was an explosion in the number of health promotion and early childhood development work for the past 10 years. Next, please. So early childhood development, just let me remind the basic concept. It's a concept that encompasses child and the context, as was emphasized many times during the Y-Mind meeting. And by child, we mean between the time between prenatal period to until age 8 to 9. And there are several domains of healthy development. And by context, we mean family and community. Next, please. And I think that parents are we may all agree that parents are the crucial elements of the early childhood development, especially if you think that they are the people who meet the child's needs in that quite sensitive period of development, and parents and other primary caregivers. And parenting programs, what we mean by parenting programs, are activities, services, or interventions for parents aimed at improving parenting. As we had done in the earthquake area, now they were extendable to other areas of Turkey when there are not real major disasters. Next, please. At that time in Turkey, there was a program initiated by early childhood educators called an Early Enrichment Project. It was an intervention designed to build social and human capital of mothers, working with the mothers, mostly in disadvantaged areas, and improving the child outcomes in terms of cognitive and social emotional and parent-child interactions. Next, please. And following the TEEP, the Early Enrichment Program, a foundation was established to spread the message and to deliver the early childhood interventions all over the country. And with we are parenting support programs, and with the aim of the family and child to improve academic achievement, social functioning, productive citizenship, as they describe, and harmonious family relationships. Next, please. And AÇEV, this is a Turkish NGO which I'm now talking about, which I'm an endorser in my own country, and I advise some of their work. It's an NGO. They do a lot of work, including awareness, lobbying for better policies, developing and implementing programs in early childhood education, women's literacy, and empowerment. So, as you see, the numbers are quite high. This is like 2011. Now it's, I think, about 20% higher. And they have exported programs to 13 countries outside Turkey, and probably Brazil there will be a collaboration between AÇEV, Yale, and a group in Brazil led by Cesar Rosario. Next, please. Yes, we can move. And they have programs. Mainly, I will talk about the mother child education program and the father support program. Next, please. And for example, the aim with children is usually has been described as the change in cognitive, social, emotional, and physical development. And with the mothers and the fathers, change in perspective and behavior towards the child and towards herself. But if you can see here, in the changes in fathers are also defined as change in behavior towards wife and towards himself. So I think it reflects some cultural issues that sometimes the critical role, the mothers, the differential roles the mothers and fathers live in the lives of their children and the families. Next, please. So just to briefly touch to what does the program, it comprises group sessions and home visits, and these programs take place in the most disadvantaged areas of big cities. And as you know, Istanbul is a big city like São Paulo, even it's more complicated in many terms, but and also in disadvantaged or war zone, undeclared war zone areas in some parts of Turkey, as you may be following from the news. So they don't pick the best areas, but they go to the places wherever there are highest number of problems, and we call it like fragile contexts. So it's group sessions. They focus on skill building and knowledge acquisition, and home visits they provide like as a check-in and hands-on training for the mothers while they're interacting with their kids. Next, please. And I think the one impact is, of course, the participants learn both daily skills and then the daily parenting skills, and they can this include helping the child do the homework or putting the child into sleep, and third, especially that's very important for Turkish parents, because most Turkish parents are like these tiger moms, as described in the American bestseller. They all want their kids to achieve the best results, to go into the best universities. So, and it's one of the catch points of this study, this work, that the mothers are enabled to teach better to their kids. Next, please. So there are some some demonstrated effects, especially academic achievement in the short term, and also the mother training has some sustained benefits on educational progress and achievement in a follow-up study that was done 22 years later. This is a social psychologist, well known for cross-cultural psychology, and now she's at her 80s. She's the person who led the Kağıtçıbaşı. It's read it that way, but I'm not sure whether you'll be able to read it. So next, please. So this is how the group sessions are. Just to give you an example, these are not the students. This is Jim Leckman, Catherine Panter-Brick, and this is myself and Pia Brito. This is just visiting one of these sites in Istanbul. But just to give you an idea, and you can tell something even from these, the kind of information that's provided. They learn about biology. They learn about many things that they wouldn't be otherwise exposed to. And also the composition, as you can tell, some people from more conservative backgrounds, some people with coming from more middle-class backgrounds. So, and this is a facilitator, and the facilitators are usually people who have a background in psychology or education, and they are volunteers, not paid at all, but they have been, for example, this lady has been in with Achev for the past 15 years. So it's a very well-known organization in Turkey, which is now spearheading such efforts. Next, please. And this is, again, like a staff meeting, as you can see our American friends there. Next, please. And this is how things work. You have to go these places and establish ties, and so build friendships and relationships. And that's how we do work in the community. Otherwise, it's really impossible to deliver our messages and spread what we want to do, spread the messages. You cannot just go and tell them prescribe how to live, what to do, how to parent, but just be part of their lives, go where they are, and so reach people whom you would never be able to see in your offices, clinics, even in the outreach clinics. So I think that's the way probably we should be going in our country and probably places like that, because otherwise we will never be able to reach the people who are really in need. But it requires some additional effort. So I have many friends like that. So anyway, let's go. So we can skip these things. This is the paper that was published first. And next, please. Next. And for example, one of these, the better vocabulary scores were obtained by children whose mothers attended the MOSEP studies. And you know, vocabulary is one of the best predictors of future educational success. We can skip the graphs, so I don't have much time. Let's go. And next, please. Higher university, better employment. Next, please. And higher status jobs. Next, please. And also they focused on the adult literacy, which is an important issue, and I understand it's an issue here in Brazil as well. And so I think it's not enough to do mental health prevention work or health promotion work, but we should be able to support the community in many ways, in many other ways as well, which is not in our domain as a psychiatrist. I don't have much to do with teaching literacy skills, but I think we should think broadly, and otherwise we don't have a chance to be accepted and our messages to be received. Next, please. And these are like some anecdotal evidence. For example, this is something. We did not know how to raise a child. We did not respect the child. We thought it was just a child, so he does not have any rights. He should behave as I say. This has changed too. Actually, this is a very good summary sentence that's I think more powerful than the graphs, because some of the changes are not really well captured in our statistical data. But if you talk to these people face to face and you spend time with them, I think health promotion studies realized in on-site have a huge impact on people's lives. Next, please. And this is the kind of people who do the these are the facilitators, and it's like their academy. Each year they come to, this is the person who made the most publications, and this is the benefactor, and these are the trainers, most of them are the counselors and teachers. Next, please. So the second step was, I think I have like about 10 minutes. Yeah, okay. So the fathers are a kind of neglected group in most parenting studies. They were like that until, like probably 90s, but here, beginning by the studies by, like Lamb and Pruitt and Cowan in 90s, there was an explosion of some literature, so especially showing that fathers' engagement with their children is associated with positive outcomes in every domain, and conversely, and the opposite, children of disengaged or negatively engaged fathers are at very high risk. Next, please. So, and there's also quite a lot of neurobiologic research ongoing, showing that even the impact of a neuropeptide like oxytocin has a similar impact on fathering behavior when, for example, with intranasal administration, the kind of fathering behavior is enhanced, at least for the duration of effect of the medication. But there's the interest in the fatherhood and paternal behavior is providing us with now new research that will guide the work that is to be done in the field. So there is a kind of a loop that takes place in the field and then goes back to the lab and comes back to the field. I think as a researcher, probably, especially people who are in the translational point, in the interface of the bench, clinical, we should add the field to this, because the kind of information, the knowledge generated in the wet lab is quite applicable to what we should be doing in the field as well. Next, please. So these are other studies that showed. Yeah, next, please. So I'll just, for the sake of time, I'm skipping that one. Again, disengaged fathers are associated with negative outcomes in risk of developing early externalizing behavior problems at age 18 months. Next, please. So the father support programs, including the supporting father involvement by Cowan and others, I mean, they have documented several changes. So including fathers in any kind of parent education programs, first of all, they reduce parents' symptoms of anxiety and depression while they are approaching to their kids, increase hands-on father involvement, which increases the engagement, which is associated with less negative outcome in terms of behavioral disorders, and of course reduced harsh parenting and parenting stress, and many other things that would be counted as the stress factors that would trigger the development of a psychopathology in the child. Even if there is not a risk for a psychopathology, it would significantly diminish the quality of life and the happiness of the child. Next, please. And all of these positive outcomes, I think, represent a reduction of familial risk factors known to be associated with familial neglect and abuse, and also increase the harmonious relationship in the family. Next, please. And the Achev group has begun doing father support programs since 2002. It's called a father support program. And next, please. And this is a UNESCO document, and they redefine. It's an ambitious title, but it's really a redefinition of fatherhood in Turkey, and it has a lot of reverberations, and it had very positive impact on the society in general. You can transmit messages not only through fatherhood support programs, but through soap operas, through movies, through endorsement statements, many other methods. So I think people outside the mental health area have given a lot of thought to the same things that we think about, and I think our paths converge in helping our kids and our communities to establish better lives. Next, please. Yeah, I mean, the same parallel to Cowan's finding, decrease in authoritarian child-rearing attitudes. Next, please. And decrease in display of traditional roles. I mean, these are like traditional roles that are not welcome. Of course, there are many traditional roles that are positive, and not necessarily all traditional roles are negative. Next, please. And less permissive attitudes. Next, please. And improved communication with child. And next. And this is just, let me give, I used to get angry and shout at him. Sometimes I even beat him. It had many negative consequences. He learned to read at an older age. He was really afraid of me. I do not have similar problems anymore. Even if I shout, that happens quite rarely. This is a progress. Next, please. Let's continue. Yeah. And the wives of the men, especially fatherhood support groups, I think the mothers have been quite instrumental in, first of all, bringing the fathers into the support groups and then keeping them in the groups. But what their reports is, he's more understanding and calmer, not only towards the child, but towards me as well. So by harmonious family, I think they mean that. Next, please. To repeat, I think Achev's mother-child education program and father support program is a program for mothers of 5- and 6-year-olds. And the program specifically targets families who do not have access to preschool education, which is not obligatory in Turkey. So that's something to note, different from Brazil and the US. And providing them with an alternative method to achieve school readiness. So this is something very important for the families especially. And through parent support and evidence-based curriculum, MOSEP uses education to reduce risk factors that are associated with child's health and well-being. Just 2 more slides. However, there's now a new challenge, because I think we thought that there's our work at Achev lacked rigorous support. We were not as rigorous as our some other groups in collecting data to support the hypothesis we had. So, but we came up with a new challenge, because the kind of so we decided to combine this need for more data collection with a new hypothesis that would probably take us further. Because what we found with both mother support and father support groups, the impact was not limited to the family. These families, the neighborhoods that they lived in, I mean, the reports, the criminal reports from these areas dropped, and we understand that from the teachers in the neighborhood schools, and from the anecdotal evidence that we hear, that there is a change not only within the family, but also the adults' relationship with others, more pro-social behaviors, and especially in areas where violence is more prevalent, there is a reduction in the number and severity of violent incidents. So that led us to, let's continue, probably think that whether ECD programs, the parenting programs, can serve, thank you, as a platform for promoting peace building within and among families. So redefining the impact of the mother support programs as a peace building effort, and whether this can be extended among families, communities, and societies, especially in those fragile circumstances. One of the ideas that led us to focus on that peace-building concept was, since these parent support groups were implemented in the West Bank of Israel, the occupied parts of the Palestinian Authority and Israel. I don't want to be going into the politically sensitive issues, but in that part of the area, and also in Lebanese refugee camps. And what we saw, and the feedback that is obtained, is there's a real change there's an increase in the prosocial behaviors, and that these kind of interventions may help to reduce conflict. So we came together with groups already active in these efforts, including, next slide please, our colleagues at Yale University, led by James Leckman, who has done work on Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and use the early childhood development parenting programs as a peace-building tool. So probably now there's a collaboration ongoing. There's a joint project. Whether there are any linkages between early childhood development and peace building, and through there will be a neuroscience component to that, mostly focusing on neurobiology of affiliation, investigating neurobiology of affiliation in collaboration with people from Israel, Ruth Feldman and her lab, and our groups in Turkey and Yale Child Study Center. And also, we are in the middle of the efforts for advocacy of better policies for children and families, and we are probably going to succeed to pass a UN resolution supporting the link between early childhood development and peace building, and now after, like more than 14 years later, 14 years after the earthquake, the kind of parents' intervention programs now taking us to a point that we have never thought of at that time, but having seen that working in the field itself, using strategies borrowed from non-mental health people, especially focusing on early childhood education and parents and teacher empowerment, can have a really significant impact on reducing the risks that would lead to severe psychopathology, but not limited to that, but also increase the peaceful behavior and support the peace-building efforts in the society. Next, please. Another one. Next. So I invite you to follow this initiative that you will be hearing more about. There will be an Ernst Strugman Forum in 2013 October, focusing on early childhood development and peace building, and also we will be putting lots of information as we gather on the Yale Child Study Center website on this collaborative. So I would like to thank you again for including me and our work in the Y-Mind conference, and it was a privilege to be with you, to listen to you, and to address you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Yang, for this magnificent presentation. It's very nice to see different approaches. We have room for only one question or comment because we run out of time, and then Jair is going to give some special messages. Helen?
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's Helen Herman from Melbourne. Thank you for that very broad and interesting and scholarly perspective. It's wonderful work to hear. I noticed that you were going to speak to us about school mental health as well.
That's
I'd just
right.
be very interested to hear a few comments about the nature of your work in that area and your comments on where we could be focusing our efforts.
Thank you. Actually, it's also linked with the kind of work we do with ACEV into the parent guidance, parent support programs, and also the kind of work that we had done during the disaster period. I think the kind of work I have been involved and still continues is based on teacher empowerment and also increasing the communication between the parent and teacher and making them part of a team working in the benefit of the child, and not only focusing on the psychopathology itself, but also nurturing the improving the climate in the school and changing the context in which the kids, the children operate. However, I think school systems and educational systems are subject to heavy political influences because every government tries to make its impression in history through changing the educational system, not only the curriculum, but the length of the year, the time that the kids will begin to school. So recently, for the past 2 years, in addition to school training, the teacher training and teacher empowerment studies, I'm mostly involved with public advocacy for improving school conditions and creating the parallel tracks for kids with with different disabilities. So that's what I do. Thank you for asking. Thank you.